Aquascaping. What is it and how do you start? This video is a great place to begin. Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Harry Spard for Pond Life Aquatics and Tropical Fish London. I'm an aquarist with over 20 years experience in keeping tropical fish. I'm an aquascaping enthusiast and I run Northwest London's biggest and best aquatic centre. And in today's video, everything you need to know to start your aquascaping journey. Let's get into it. So what actually is aquascaping? It's a way of keeping aquaria by creating underwater gardens, by replicating actual landscapes, biomes, or something more extraordinary from your mind's eye. It was originally popularized in the East by famous aquascapers and photographers like Takashi Amano in the 1980s. It was brought to the UK in the 2000s by people like George Farmer and Practical Fish Keeping magazine. Then it's been brought into the digital age by content creators like Serpa Designs, Keeping Fish Simple, MD Fish Tanks, Fish Shop Matt, and the list goes on and on. Obviously, this is a really narrowed down history of aquascaping, but to go into real depth into how aquascaping came about, it would need its entire video or maybe even video series. So I'm going to keep this one brief. So you want to give aquascaping a go? Good. It's a fully worthwhile hobby that relieves anxiety, reduces stress, and gives you a creative outlet unlike any other hobby I can think of. It allows you to create a living, breathing piece of artwork. If you're still on the fence about whether or not you want to invest in this hobby, then I've recently made a couple of videos talking about why keeping aquariums has never been easier and why it is such a great hobby to be a part of. I'll leave links to those videos in the description below. If you're already set on giving this amazing hobby a go, then here's my first piece of advice. Get the research in. Look up people like Takashi Amano. If you don't know who he is, then you're gonna get really bored of me talking about him because he, in my opinion, is the reason why aquascaping is the way it is in the modern age. He is the grandfather of all aquascaping. If it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have a job because aquascaping is what is driving this industry right now. Look up some of his works, find inspiration from what he's done and try and replicate it. There's other great resources. I particularly recommend looking at something like the Tropica website. They've got an entire tab on their website that has different inspirations. Every single one of these photos that you see has a literage for how big the aquarium that is in the photo is set up, how easy it is for the planting in there, and it's just full of really great places to begin in giving you inspiration for what your aquascapes can look like. Finally, I would recommend looking at something like Practical Fish Keeping. Particularly since Alex Bell took on the magazine in October, there's been a greater and greater influence of aquascaping on the magazine itself. There's different aquascapes in every single article, and it has a wealth of knowledge from people far more experienced than me in how to set up different aquascapes. If it's your first time ever trying to set up an aquascape, I would highly recommend trying to copy one of these aquascapes that you find from any of the resources I've talked about. It will just give you a direction to go in. It means that even if you just want to base it on that and not copy it bit by bit, it gives you a framing and a model to work towards rather than just going in blind and ending up with something that you're disappointed with in the end. Just remember, aquascaping is a skill. You're not going to be amazing at it to begin with. Like any skill, you're going to have to train yourself in it. The more you do it, the better you will become. Just look at what Tom Ryan said in this month's issue of Practical Fish Keeping when he was talking about trying to place in the top 100 aquascapes in the world. I knew it would take time, but as long as I improved every step of the way, I knew I was on the right path. You wouldn't just walk into a gym and assume that you're going to be able to do an Olympic overhead press the first time without ever having tried it before. You would have to have someone show you first, or at least watch a YouTube video, or at minimum read an article on how to do the movement. If you just went in blind, things aren't going to work out the way you want them. Aquascaping is the exact same thing. Find inspiration, whether that be from nature or any of the resources I've talked about in this video so far, and then aim yourself towards recreating that. What size aquarium should you go for? Now, size doesn't always matter, but when it comes to aquascaping, particularly if you're a beginner, it kind of does. Now, I'm gonna echo what people like Fish Shop Matt and George Farmer have said on Subsurface podcast by NT Labs, and say 60 liters is probably a good starting point for most beginners. Multiple reputable brands offer starter kits at reasonable prices. Whether that's Superfish, Denali, Waza, Fluval, they all have really solid starter kits that come with good lighting, decent filtration, and the good thing about going for a 60 liter is they have ample space for stocking once you've finished your first aquascaping creation. That being said, in more recent years, I've experimented more and more with smaller and smaller aquariums. In fact, the most recent aquascape I did was a 15-liter Scaper Cube by Superfish, and although I did sell it, I think it's probably the best aquascape I've ever done. Working on a smaller scale forces you to think a lot harder about what plants and hardscape you're going to use to create perspective. And because they are smaller, they tend to cost a lot less to set up, which means you can put the reps in. You can have multiple aquariums. They don't create space constraint because they are so small. They cost less, and particularly the things like the Scaper Cube 15, they're excellent value for money. Ultimately, choosing the correct aquarium size is going to be a personal thing. It depends on your budget, it depends on how much space you have, but be prepared, once you've set up your first aquascape, you're probably going to end up with a lot more. Because once you've caught the itch for creating something like this, it's really hard to stop. Choosing hardscape is largely dictated by what inspiration you've had for your aquascape. That being said, whether or not it's wood or stone, I would always recommend getting more hardscape than you think is necessary to achieve the look that you want to go for. This isn't just me saying it as someone who owns a fish store who actively benefits of people buying more hardscape than they need. Alex Bell made an excellent Instagram short where he discussed using hardscape in an aquarium, and he articulates really well how you do not want to get to a point where you're finishing how you want your hardscape to look and then you run out of pieces. It's always better to have way too much than way too little, because it's so frustrating to get to a point where you feel like you just need a little bit extra to achieve the perfect look that you need, and then you can't get there, or you have to go to the shop. Avoid this. Buy more than you need. You can always store it. It's not like plants where they're going to go off, or fish where you have to find space for them. You can store hardscape easier than anything else in the aquarium trade, pretty much, and you can always use it for your next aquascape. Planting is somewhat more nuanced than hardscape. If you're going to try and replicate an aquascape from the resources I've talked about earlier, obviously you're going to be dictated by what plants they use in those aquascapes. But something to bear in mind is what aquarium lighting you actually have. You don't want to be looking at a piece of inspiration that's using Ludwigia Diamond Super Red, which is a beautiful bright red stem plant that needs high lighting and CO2, when you're planning to put it in a Superfish Start 60 that doesn't have the best lighting in the world, and you're probably not going to be putting CO2 injection on it. There are some starter sets like the Superfish Scaper 60, which you could probably get away with this with, as long as you supplement with a good fertilizer and CO2. You want to bear in mind what lighting, and if you're willing to use CO2 and fertilizers when setting up your aquarium. I'm going to say this now, and it probably needs its entirely own video, but I have started to recommend it to a lot of people who are setting up aquascapes in our store to either supplement with liquid CO2 and fertilizer, or invest in a bio CO2 injector or a regular CO2 injector. CO2 is the secret sauce or cheat code to having really happy and healthy long-time plant growth. It makes creating an aquascape with bright reds or even just really lush, dense green planting possible. It just opens an entire world of aquarium planting that I don't think is necessarily possible without it. That being said, if you don't want to commit to having CO2 or fertilizer, don't despair. You can still create something particularly special without these two. Two of my favorite aquariums at home right now are low-ish tech. They've got really good lighting on it, but neither of them are fertilized and neither of them have any form of CO2, whether that's liquid or bio, on them. And I've still managed to achieve really impressive plant growth in both of them. It's just taken a long time. Both of these aquariums have been up and running for about 3 years at this point, and I get so much joy from being able to watch these aquariums grow and develop over time. But if that's something that you don't want to wait for, then you might want to consider CO2. I could go on and on about the joys of creating aquariums that develop over long periods of time, but there's people who've got a lot more experience and a lot more knowledge than me that talk about it a lot more eloquently. George Farmer has talked about this endlessly on his channel, and it's fascinating to see someone who has so much knowledge about aquascaping talk about these things. I'll leave some videos in the comments below, which I think are worth checking out, and they might actually encourage you to keep aquariums for the long term rather than the immediate visual effect. If you do want me to talk about keeping aquariums over a longer period of time, then let me know and I'll happily talk about the developments of those two aquariums, but I'm not going to do that in this video here. Choosing a substrate can be complicated, and I know it can throw a lot of beginners off. How much should you use? Which one should you get? Should you cap it? I have found more people stumble at the substrate hurdle than pretty much any other point of aquascaping, so I'm going to make it as simple as I possibly can. If you are a beginner aquascaper, choose a comprehensive plant soil that you can plant directly into. Have it at a minimum of 1 inch at its lowest point and bank it up towards the back of the aquarium and then plant into it. Or if you're following an inspiration, shape the substrate around what is in that inspiration post, but stick to a plant soil. Yes, I love working with sand, I love working with different substrates, but I feel like working with a comprehensive soil from a reputable brand, whether that's Aquascape soil, Colombo Floral Grow, Fluval Stratum, Tetra, the list goes on and on. Using a comprehensive soil that you can just plant into removes a barrier for entry, which I think can only be a good thing. Again, substrates are something that I can go into in more detail in another video, and if you would like me to do that, let me know. But for now, if you're just starting out, go for a comprehensive aquasoil. They look great and your plants will grow beautifully. Ultimately, aquascaping should be a relaxing and enjoyable hobby that allows you to create something living and breathing with your own 2 hands. Gather your materials and dive in. Sorry for the pun, but remember, you don't have to be perfect when starting out. Do not let perfection get in the way of you starting something. Like all enjoyable things in life, there will be struggle to begin with. This is a new skill for you. You're only going to get better with time, and we can't all be Takashi Amano when we first start out. And if you are, I hate you. I wish I was you. Yeah. Put the reps in. Use the resources that I've talked about in this video, and ultimately, I hope this video has encouraged at least 1 or 2 of you to give aquascaping a go, or point you in the right direction to at least make a start on it. A few final points as I wrap up this video. I will put a shopping list in the description for you below if you are first starting out, on what you need to get to start your first aquascape. If you're going with a starter set, that's already a great start. It will have your glass box, your light, usually a filter, sometimes a heater, and then you'll need your substrate, your hardscape, your plants, an aquarium net, aquascaping tools, and a good dechlorinator and biological kickstarter like NT Labs, Satis, and Optimus, which will help you cycle your aquarium quickly and efficiently so that you can stock fish and crustaceans well once you've flooded your new creation. Remember, you're creating something that's a living, breathing ecosystem, and you should enjoy yourself when creating it. And I truly, truly hope a few of you get started in this hobby because of this video. But if you're still worried about starting your aquascaping journey and you live in London, I am doing an aquascaping workshop on the last weekend of April. Tickets are on sale now as of releasing this video. There is very limited places and a few people have already shown interest. It will be conducted in store. You will have an aquarium with hardscape, tools, glue, plants, substrate, and me with you to work through your first ever aquascape. Or if you're already a veteran and you're just amped to make another aquascape and meet new people who are like-minded and share your passion for this incredible hobby, then act fast, because I think these might sell out pretty quickly. And hey, depending on how it goes, it might be the first and last time we do it. But in all seriousness, I hope this goes well and it's something that we can continue to do regularly here. I do want to say thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. The entries for the 1,000 subscriber giveaway have now closed. I am going to spend the next couple of weeks going through, making sure that I've got everybody's names in a random picker, and I will be announcing the winner of the NT Labs goodie pack and plants and filter, and then the second and third place winner in the next couple of weeks. It means the world to me that we hit 1,000, and I'm so excited for the future of Pond Life Aquatics and creating content for you guys. And yeah, it's a privilege. Thank you so much. But for now, that's everything from me, and I hope you'll join me again next time for this Pond Life.